Wedbush out with its top AI stocks for 2026. Dan Ives writing, heading into 2026, investors are both excited and nervous about the AI revolution. 2026 is an inflection point year. Dan joins us now with his colorful self. Happy New Year. Wonderful to see you.
As always.
So let's talk about that. Why is it an inflection point? What do you mean by that?
It's really about, to me, it's about the second, third, fourth derivatives playing out across AI. Look, it's monetization. And you talk about Tesla, it's the next phase in terms of autonomous, robotics, consumer AI, especially when it comes to Apple, and I think what we're going to see. Look, I think it's a prove it year, but that actually makes me more bullish because I think now we go into the next phase of AI. I think tech stocks are up 20, 25% in 2026, but it's not just big tech, it's about second, third, fourth derivatives playing out.
I will be fascinated to see. I don't think anything is officially expected, but you're going to CES, right, which is not only the biggest tech conference in the world, but has become the most important car maker conference as well. It'll be fascinating to see if Tesla comes out with any other products there, or if we see a lot more robotics and automation products.
Yeah, and to your point, look, it all starts with the godfather of AI, Jensen. He'll be there with the black leather jacket, because when his speech, to me, is just so important on Monday, because it really starts off strategically what AI is going to look like. He's going to talk about physical AI in terms of autonomous robotics. I think the two best physical AI plays in the world today, it's NVIDIA and it's Tesla. And I think that speaks to you talk about like Tesla, what everyone's focused on. This is autonomous chapter now coming to Tesla. I think you see Musk right now, wartime CEO. That's the focus when it comes to AI, but also it's the monetization. Remember, only 3% of U.S. companies have gone down the AI path so far.
Are these robots expected to be like B2B robots, so building things in factories, or like a Roomba for consumers? What kind of products do you expect them to monetize?
Yeah, especially at CES, look, humanoid robotics is going to be front and center, autonomous. You're seeing flying cars. A lot of the presence, you talk about a lot of the tensions between U.S. and China. The presence of Chinese companies is going to be, it's going to be a monster in terms of what we see there. I think doubling, over the last few years. But I think it's really going to be about humanoid robotics. It's going to be about autonomous. But this is also going to be about more embedded AI devices that consumers are going to see. CES, we're not just talking about flying drones and refrigerators that talk to you. Now these are much more sort of front and center in terms of it's a who's who. Every big tech player is going to be there, even if they're not unofficially there. They're there to look for acquisitions.
I love the idea of opening the refrigerator and having it say, do you really want that? I mean, I can just imagine the future for, move over Ozempic. So there's this question here also about what some of the moves in late 2025 mean. And I'd love your take on this, because we saw some acquisitions made by the likes of Meta and NVIDIA. And I just wonder whether there's more cost consciousness and more of a competitive advantage that they're looking to solidify at a time where suddenly companies are saying, hold on, what are we paying for this, and what are we actually getting?
Look, I think you hit on a great point, because the reality is it's an arms race. That's what's going on with big tech, and right now, at the top of that mountain is big tech. And when you look at like Google's win versus DOJ, antitrust, I mean, this is sort of go time for big tech. And I think you're going to see more and more acquisitions. And we've talked about not just on enterprise, on energy, and I think really across the board. And it speaks to really what we're seeing right here is that it's not just about big tech getting bigger and bigger, doing acquisitions, spending. You're going to have $600 billion in CapEx in big tech, but it's also you're going to see other players being like, don't forget about me. Look at AMD. You're going to see like, look at Cisco, look at IBM. I mean, there's going to be a lot of other players saying like, hey, we want to get into that AI party. We don't want to look through the windows, like a lot of the bears are.
We were talking about BYD triumphed over Tesla to become the world's biggest electric vehicle manufacturer. We also have seen big tech in China outperform on an equity market perspective in 2025. Do you expect that to continue and for China to really solidify more of its neck-and-neck position with the U.S. or even supersede it?
Look, I think the reality is for the first time in 30 years, U.S. is ahead of China when it comes to tech. And I think that's very important, obviously led by NVIDIA, Microsoft, Palantir, and others. But in China, look, we're bullish on China tech. We talk about Alibaba, you look at Tencent, you look at a lot of the other names there. I think what you're seeing is it's a narrowing, but it's something where you're seeing robotics really play front and center, autonomous, EVs, BYD and others in China. But when you think about how to play it, you have to play US tech, and then there are Chinese tech players to go after. But in terms of AI revolution, like we've said, it's third inning, one out, relative to this AI game. And I think the bears, like I said, like in hibernation mode, they can see AI in the spreadsheets. And I think 2026 is going to be a year that's going to be another bull market year for, for tech and for AI.
I had really the same question as Lisa, again, because we've seen so many stories this morning about Baidu's chip unit filing for an IPO, another chip designer, I think Breiner, with a very successful IPO today, maybe another mini DeepSeek moment, right, with a cheaper artificial intelligence, all among the most read stories on the Bloomberg terminal. So clients are paying attention to what's going on in China with AI. How do you bet on that? I mean, do you buy the individual stocks? Is there an ETF that you like? Do you have some of these stocks in your ETF?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, for the Ives ETF, I mean, what we really focus on is the AI 30. It's like, who are the 30 winners? We have a few of the Chinese players in there. I think Baidu, you look at Huawei in terms of the success they're having. Look, right now, NVIDIA's 4 to 5 years ahead of any other chip player. And I think that's well known. That's why even a third-rate H200 restricted, China big tech's going to line up despite what the politics in Beijing. But this is an arms race. It's the narrowing of the gap. You want to play some of those Chinese tech players. But the reality is, in the U.S., from NVIDIA, AMD, we talk about our top five, Palantir, CrowdStrike, and cybersecurity. Tesla, I think it's going to be the most important year ever for them. Microsoft, I think on hyperscale right now, Microsoft, Oracle, those are names, I think, table pounders in my opinion in terms of what we see. And then Apple, finally, they come to the AI party instead of being on the treadmill at 2.0 speed. And now they actually start to get in terms of the consumer AI revolution, $75 to $100 per share.
There's only one company that you didn't mention that's on your list, and that's Microsoft. Where is Microsoft in terms of winning out versus Google? Who is its main competitor?
Look, in terms of Redmond, the enterprise, this is their backyard. When you think about companies that are moving to AI, the first phone call goes to Nadella. And I think you're seeing Google, you're seeing Amazon, what Jassie's doing, they're narrowing the gap and they're going to be successful. But when I look at Microsoft, you have 25, 30 billion incremental monetization. I don't even think it's factored into street numbers. That's right, in the stock ultimately has a 6 in front of it. And I think this is going to be, we're going to go into January, into earnings season. I think that's going to be kind of the show me story showing like, look, this is not stopping. Like we said, AI party started at 9 p.m. It's now 10:30, 10:45 p.m.
Me and Lisa are asleep.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly what I was thinking.
But the party goes to 4 a.m. And that's where we are.